Today we're talking about why college tours matter.
Welcome to Vacation Mavens, the podcast that brings you travel inspiration and practical tips from two moms who know how to plan the perfect trip.
I'm Tamara from Your Time to Fly.
And I'm Kim from Stuffed Suitcase. With over 40 years of travel experience between us, we're here to share our favorite destinations from road trips to cruising, theme parks, and European adventures.
Whether you're planning a family vacation or a mom getaway, we have the tips and tricks to make memories that will last a lifetime. So Kim, you are in the throes of sending number 2 off to college, getting through this last senior year, and I know you just did some college tours. We obviously have some joint experience with that, and so we wanted to share some of that knowledge with those of you that are just starting this process, because I find this process so stressful, so much pressure from everyone and expectations, and it can be heartbreaking, and there's just so much involved with it, and it's also one of the biggest decisions that they're going to make because it's such a costly decision as well. So if you're going to spend that much money, you want to make the right choice.
Absolutely.
So I think it's going to be a good time to talk about college tours and how to approach this whole process. But first, I want to say congratulations to Mia because you have some big news.
Yeah. Oh, I'm getting emotional even thinking about it now. She is my last one. Yeah. So Mia has committed to UCLA, which was her dream school. It's funny. She had a lot of college acceptances come in, a couple wait lists, and she recorded a lot of things with friends. And this one she didn't even record because she thought, there's no way I'm not going to get in.
Yeah.
3.8 acceptance for the mechanical engineering program there.
Yeah.
And she is one of them.
That's
so
amazing.
We're very proud of her.
So amazing. And for those that haven't been through this yet, UCLA is one of the I think that in Michigan are the hardest to get into publics, or maybe Berkeley too. They get 150,000 applications.
150,000 applications this year. They had the most applications in the entire United States.
I'll say for those of you that are now coming up, what I have heard is that Mia's class, this class is the largest. Yeah. Hannah and Lizzie were very large, and then I think it was slightly larger. This is the largest, and then it's going to fall off. So my hope is that if your kids have not gone off to college yet, maybe it'll be a little bit easier for them. Yeah. I don't know. It's such a, like I said, it's such a hard thing, but maybe as those applications drop a little bit, it'll feel a little less impossible these days. It's just, it's just a lottery feeling.
It is a lottery feeling in a lot of ways because you can have your kid be an amazing kid and they can get into a top school and then not get into a state school. Mm-hmm. It's also, I think it's really, as you get ready to go through this process, I think it's really important to have a healthy, open communication and dialogue with your kid about their value is not tied to where they get in or where they don't get in and everything. And the best thing is to just have options and be open-minded and also really know if college is even the right path for them. Our high school does an amazing job with that, of helping kids prepare if they want to go straight into trade school or if they want to do something else. So just make sure you have open communication about it.
Yeah, that's good because I really feel, especially with the costs, it's so insane that if you don't know what you're looking to do, or there's just so many good other trade options where you can make a really good living.
Really good living. Really good, yeah.
I really hate this. And I know that we have very academic focused kids, but I hate that there's so much focus and pressure on college as the be all and end all, because it's not. I have family members who have college degrees who struggle to find a job, and I have family members who have trades that are doing awesome, so.
Yeah, I think it's really important to know it's not there's lots of paths you can take, so really helping your kids. But if your kids are on a college path, then today we are going to talk about a big part, I think, that I didn't realize how much it would matter, what we're talking about today, until I went through it with Kid 1 and now Kid 2, and then talking to you when you went through it with Hannah as well. And that is taking college campus tour visits and visiting college campuses, because it is a big part. Do you want to talk about, maybe open us up about why do college campus tours matter? I know it is an investment that people will be doing. So why do they matter? And maybe how do you decide if you should tour a campus?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in general, when you're starting this process, early, I'm talking maybe 10th grade, it's important to even just go to local colleges and just have them walk the campus, have them get a sense of Do they want something small? Do they want something big? Do they want something urban? Do they want something suburban? Do they want something rural? Do you want a closed campus? Do you want an open campus? What is the style and vibe? And just having them think about those. And I know from experience, like I wanted to start it early. Hannah was reluctant because she didn't want to think about the whole process.
Yeah.
And later in the process, she was thankful that we did and thanked me for pushing that, even though I felt like I was being a little bit too much of a pushy mom in that. But I know that it takes time and you really need to experience things. And we'll talk about this, but there's something about when they find the right fit that just clicks. And it's not to say that they're maybe, whether you do this before or after they get in, maybe it'll click and they're not going to get in. We don't know, but you at least do.
That's a big part of it.
I don't even know how many colleges out there, but there are so many options that even when you narrow down, look, Hannah wanted to study astrophysics at a large public university with a big sports, like she had all these requirements. And there's still, that narrows it down to 20. If your kid is, I want to go into business, okay, you've got like hundreds. So you have to figure out, like, are you going to be local? Are you going to be out of state? There's so many different things to consider, but there's something about finding that fit that you just can't quite do from a college fair or a virtual session. And I know with our girls back when Hannah and Lizzie were looking, we didn't have a lot of other choices.
Yeah. I think all of that's really good. I do think it's also a really good time as you're having this discussion with your kids is to go online and even look at a couple of things we started looking and we created a spreadsheet is like out-of-state tuition, like what are the out-of-state estimated costs? What's the in-state estimated cost? And then does your income level even qualify for need-based scholarships or need-based grants? Because if you're not going to qualify for that, then you want to be searching, do these schools even offer merit scholarships? Like California, their merit scholarships all go to in-state kids. They don't have merit scholarships for out-of-state kids. You have to look at all of those things because you don't want to get your kid in love with a campus and then go, oh, you love it. You got in. Sorry, we can't afford it. So I do think that it is the time also to be doing some research just so they need to know that this is an investment and they need to see what the numbers are behind these places.
I personally believe it's so important to have an open conversation about the finances because I see so many times in these different college Facebook groups where people are like, oh, my kid got into their dream school and I can't say no, so I'm going to take a third mortgage. I'm like, no, don't do that because first of all, research the college graduation rates because you know what? It ends up not being for everyone. And then you're stuck with a very big bill and no degree. There's just so many other things like it. It hurts me when I see people going into such financial debt and such over to try to make a dream come true where it's much if you can just be open and be like, this is what we can do. This is what you can do. This is the reality. And this is because when you get those acceptance letters and they're like, oh, and we'll offer you these loans, they don't tell you what is the monthly payment going to be of those loans. And think about it. They don't know. They're just like, oh, they must think that I'll be able to pay that back. And suddenly you're stuck with something that's way more than my mortgage.
And you're earning interest it's like accruing interest at a faster rate than you're paying it off. And so that's a side note. We're not but little
it's important because when you are planning this,
so you don't want to get them in love with something that you would never be able to afford. So keep that in mind. I think what Tamara said is great. If you are starting early, your state schools are a great place. Like even if you go visit the local community college, go visit a couple of different, like normally you'll have probably an in-state university and an in-state school, and they probably have very different vibes, at least in Washington and Kansas as well. Although in Kansas, it was like KU is Lawrence and still rural, and then you got Manhattan for K-State. There are different vibes. We experienced that on our recent trip. We visited UCLA, and then we visited Cal Poly, and there's some things that campuses had quite a bit in common, but of course UCLA is right next to LA, and so I think what you said about understanding that your kid is gonna figure out what kind of environment. Do they want to be in a city like NYU or Columbia, or do they want to be in the suburbs like KU
and size? We went to look at Vassar early on, and she was like, "This is way too small," and then it's just next to this little tiny town with two. And you can hop on the train and be in New York very quickly, but right there's not a lot. So trying to find that right fit with size. I have a friend, two of Hannah's friends go to Northeastern, and one of the moms will always say, she goes to Northeastern's so big, it's so big. And I'm like, no, it's not compared to Arizona.
U of A?
You know,
Yeah, exactly.
So it's size is relative, but it makes a big difference. And it makes a difference
Yeah.
like in your classes and just finding
Absolutely.
your group on campus, and then the number of
Yeah.
other activities and things that are offered on campus too.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. Let's talk about when you're going to plan a trip and visit one of these college campuses that's maybe not local. I think the first thing you have to think about is like hotels. And I guess backwards think this, because one of the best things I've learned of having one kid is joining Facebook groups for parents of these campuses, especially once you get into more like where you think your kid is definitely going to be applying for. You probably don't want to join it when you're at the early stages of 12 different campuses. But once they narrow it down, I think it's really important to join those groups. And those groups are great places to find out, like, where are the popular places to stay when you're coming into town. But if you're not at that level yet, I think just any tips for how you chose where to stay? For me, it was just I put in the college campus name and then looked on a map and kind of was like, okay, is that walking distance? Is it parking? Stuff like that.
And we wanted to be walking distance for most of the ones that we did, because you're just going to have a better sense of it than if you're like driving in, finding a parking lot, walking on for a campus tour and then leaving. Like you want to feel like, what is it going to be like for the student? One of the chains that we love is The Graduate. The Graduate has
That's right.
hotels outside of so many of the different schools, and they are very customized for that particular community.
Yeah.
And
I don't think they have one at UCLA for The Graduate.
I don't think so. We stayed at one in Berkeley when we went there, but The Graduate, we actually stayed in Santa Monica. But I've stayed at them in Michigan, in Wisconsin, California, Arizona, like Virginia. Like there's a lot of different, and it's part of Hilton now, which I don't know if you realize. So now you can book them with points.
Your points.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's a good place because you'll get more of a sense of the atmosphere of the surrounding community.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's not always possible. I think for some places you can't stay quite in walking distance, but it is definitely a beneficial thing. I think that's what I was going to say is a huge thing about booking one is that when you're going there, do drive around the region. Like, how do you get into the campus? What are you driving past? What are these areas like? Berkeley has a vibe that when you go visit that campus, USC has the same thing. So I think it's really important as you're reaching it, thinking about how would my student get in and out of this campus and thinking about those kind of things.
Yeah, and if they're going to be if they're flying or driving, like when we looked at Case Western in Cleveland, like it was very close to a train station, so you could take the train from the airport.
Oh, nice.
I think. And then when we're looking at Colorado Boulder, they have a shuttle from Denver that's very cheap. It's $5 or $10 or something like that. So yeah, you have to think about how will my student get back and forth as well.
Yeah, that was a huge factor for us. Recently, we visited Cal Poly, which is it's San Luis Obispo, California. And we're in Seattle, and there's a daily flight into San Luis Obispo, but there's one daily flight. And so it's really limited on timing. And then it's double, if not triple the price what we can fly into LAX.
Yeah.
And so it's like a 3 to 4 hour drive north from LAX, much more expensive and harder to get in and out of with less flexibility. So that is something to consider.
Yeah, especially since a lot of campuses don't allow like freshmen to have cars, or parking is just difficult to get permits or spaces for.
Yeah, absolutely. What else do you think? What should we bring up for visiting the college campuses? Maybe about booking, like when you're there, what you should booking in advance?
Yeah, I think that not everyone realizes that you need to reserve a tour, and they sell out because, if you think, oh, we have off school this day, so we're going to go, so do a lot of other people.
So do I.
So you really have to plan in advance. Yes, you can go and you can just like usually walk the campus unless it's a completely closed campus. But you're just going to get better insights if you're on a tour. I would definitely recommend like booking that in advance. And usually you can have a general info session and then an actual tour, and sometimes a tour for a particular school if you're looking at the College of Science or whatever.
Yeah, we had that with Oregon State. We couldn't get on a general tour, but there was still a College of Engineering tour, which we were able to get on. That was useful and very helpful. But Yeah, especially if you're thinking spring break, be eyeing that and plan it early. You can always cancel the tour if you end up deciding you don't want to go there or do something. But yeah, I think that was the biggest realization for us. The first time we visited UCLA, we just drove on the campus and paid for parking and wandered around ourselves.
Yeah.
And then, of course, this more recent trip, we had organized stuff. So
Yeah.
I do think that's
when we
some
were
people don't know.
looking during, it was like 2021 to 2022. So still like COVID times, like not a lot of, it was even hard to get a bit of sense of the campus because some of them didn't have kids on it or
Yeah.
many kids, or at least kids that are walking around going to class because they were in their rooms or something like that. It's helpful. We ended up just self-touring a lot. Some schools will have an app or like an audio kind of tour that you can, but
Yeah.
I would highly recommend. I know one of the things that we did also when we went to the second time to Colorado, I had been connected with someone whose kid was the same major as Hannah was interested in. So we couldn't get on a tour, but I actually just paid that girl to give Hannah a personal tour
Yeah.
and talk to her about the major. So if you can connect maybe through these Facebook groups or other things, that's another option if you can't get on the scheduled tour.
I think that's a really good, also that leads us into another great tip is that it's really good if you can try and time it where there actually are going to be students on campus. A few of the questions you might want to ask are things like about the food, like where is your favorite place to eat? How do you like the food? Things like that. But one of the big questions we've learned to start asking people is, do you have trouble getting classes?
Yeah.
What is the registration process like? That's a huge issue that's facing
Especially big schools.
big schools.
There's a lot, and when it comes to questions, I was listening to something the other day, and the guy was talking about taking his son on a college tour and how the parents asked all the questions. And I know that parents will have a lot of questions, but really encourage your kids to think about what questions they have and ask their questions so the parents don't take over.
Yeah.
When you're on a tour, it's usually a pretty set schedule of what you're seeing, and you may or may not get to go into many buildings between security and health and everything else. We don't expect that you're necessarily going to see a dorm room unless you have a personal connection with that.
Yeah, exactly.
But there are a lot of really...
Please don't try to just randomly go see it. It's a little creepy.
But there are a lot of room tours on YouTube.
Yeah.
So if you want to look at different dorms and try to decide which ones you might be interested in, check out YouTube. There's a lot of those. Usually the housing department will have different students create their little dorm tour videos. But I think you definitely want to go to the student union and the different places where you can eat. And you want to see, I know at Arizona, it can be so busy during lunchtime. It's so kind of crazy that if you have a lot of time, it might be hard to eat there. You see some people that are like pre-order for like pickup, or you see all the delivery robots.
The delivery robots.
So definitely you want to check that out. I would want to check out like where the buildings are that your kid was mostly like, where's the buildings that they're going to be spending a lot of their time in.
Yeah. Mechanical engineering buildings are always ugly.
The physics buildings are usually not all that great either. Astronomy a bit better. But yeah, and where are they like in proximity if you want to start thinking about dorms, or just like the library that they'd be going to, how far away is that, and where is it on campus in terms of where they're eating. And so I think they're going to want to show you the nicest parts, and you need to like dig underneath and try to figure out the things that they're actually going to be using every single day.
Absolutely. I think it's good also, I didn't realize this, but different campuses do it differently, where we have friends and UCLA is a swipe system for meals. So it's always good to look into that while you're there. Do you get to just swipe and go like a buffet and get whatever you want to eat? Whereas Lizzie at Oregon State is you buy a meal plan that basically gives you a discounted pricing, and it's more like a cafeteria. So you like buy a ramen bowl for $12, or you buy, and so the prices are more, it can get expensive.
Yeah, more
differently than
I feel like
the swipers.
More and more colleges are outsourcing the food, and so it becomes more of like a food court, and then it's like not always the healthiest or greatest options either. I definitely saw like a mix of that when we did our college tours. Another way Arizona does it is a combination of both. So your cap cash, you can use a certain number of swipes, but there's 2 places on campus that actually have a swipe, and then you go in. This is when I went to college, and you swipe and then you just go get whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
But those are only 2 places on campus. Everything else is like, how much money are you spending?
Yes.
And so that money, it
was
important to think about, what is your kid going to be eating?
Yeah, exactly. Because if you have a kid who really needs a lot of food, those meal plans make a difference. So that's something to keep in mind. And then trying the food while you're there. I highly recommend eating a meal there if you can and just see if it's good or not. Because there's been some campuses we know they are not known for having good food.
Right.
UCLA supposedly has the #1 food in the nation.
I remember that. Yeah. It's me being where they're located.
Yeah, exactly. But we're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
But I was surprised to see, because we're coming from Oregon State with Lizzie, she's the price, like cafeteria pricing per item, and UCLA is still the swipe at the 4 dining halls or whatever.
I feel like if you have a kid that's a big eater, look for the swipes.
The swipe. You want the swipes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's all good. So maybe we can talk about Admitted Students Day, because I think that's...
Yeah, one for UCLA.
Yeah, we just did the UCLA one. We actually did Cal Poly and UCLA.
Okay.
So we made it work where we could do... Cal Poly was on a Friday, UCLA's was on a Saturday, so we tried to get those both in. But
do you think that made a difference in helping her decide, or was it more the...
I don't know if it made a difference, but the thing... I think she'd already decided, so I don't think it made a difference on where she was going. But the thing that I was so impressed about the Admitted Students Day is that I hadn't taken into consideration that really made UCLA obviously the right fit for her is the club fair booths.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we did it at Cal Poly, and then we also had it there, and that's something I hadn't considered. And while she was at UCLA, she ended up going up to this table because she saw like a robotic arm, and she's, Mom, I'm going to go over here.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they were just sitting up, and they're like, oh yeah, we're an all women's rover competition team, and this will be our 2nd year. We just started, and you guys don't know, but that's Mia's dream, is to build rovers for NASA. She gets talking to this girl, and the girl, she mentions, oh, I want to build rovers for NASA. And the girl's like, that's my dream too.
Yeah.
And it turns out this girl is a junior and already has an internship with a company that's working on I want to say Intensity. It's not Curiosity. It's not now.
I don't know.
Whatever the project is right now. I think it's an I, but of course Mia knew. And she thought that was the coolest thing. So she already got Instagram friended that girl. And so now she's already got like a foot in of someone she knows that's into her same thing. So that was an aspect of an Admitted Students Day that I hadn't considered, because when you do campus tours, you don't always get that. And the Admitted Students Day, again, is it comes after acceptances go out. So it's only so be prepared, that April timeframe, be prepared for those things.
That's when Hannah did hers too in Arizona. And I know, like that is, when you're doing a campus tour, I'll hear Hannah now. Campus tour. The students are annoyed by them, right? Because and so they're not interacting with them. But during an Admitted Students Day, right, when it's like a fair, and then you're looking to like recruit new members, and so it's definitely going to be different, and you're going to be able to interact with those people more, and you're going to have more opportunities to interact with other incoming freshmen. I know Hannah, when we went, Glenn took her to Admitted Students Day at Arizona, and she had Instagram connected with a potential roommate, and they met for, I think, at Hannah's favorite tea shop, and they hung out for a long time. They ended up, the one girl went into one of these community housing, you know how they have like learning communities?
Yep.
Yeah, she went into that, and there wasn't a spot for Hannah, so they didn't end up being roommates. But it's a way to meet up with potential roommates, like even if you've connected online, and you want to like actually meet in person and see if you're still like connecting. So there's, I think and you just get more of a sense than just here's an hour or 2 tour and then you're off on your own.
Yeah, and I think they're really trying to win you over at that point, because the whole idea of it happening in April is because most kids have to commit by May 1st. So the acceptances start coming out typically in March or April if they're competitive universities. If they're a rolling admission, they can come out earlier, or if you do early decision. But so the idea is keep your Aprils free if you're thinking of doing that, or if your kid gets into a few colleges or is considering, you might want to be prepared for that, because I do think that it's a very different vibe than just a campus tour.
And be prepared for them, definitely, to try to be winning them over, because at this point is when, you're going to have the Instagram things, you're going to have something with, you're going to have a lot of like school spirit and things that are going to get the kid excited. So if you have one Admitted Students Day and you're really deciding between 2 things and you only do one of them, like they're probably going to want to do
They're probably going to want to go to that one.
Yeah. And I think as we talk about Admitted Students Day, it makes me think of other kind of college dates and things that you need to be aware of and plan for in the future. And we should probably start by thinking about like when you're accepting, sometimes, like you said, May 1st is usually the deadline. But these days, there's such a problem with housing on campus
Yes.
that even if you're waiting to officially decide until Admitted Students Day or until May 1st, you may want to put a deposit down on housing before
Yep.
then, unless your school guarantees housing.
Yeah, 100%. And you normally have 2 deposits. So normally you'll have like your SIR, which is your intent to register, statement of intent to register, something like that, right? And that often comes with a deposit. And sometimes you have to do that to then be able to do the housing deposit. The idea is if you're debating between 2 schools and you want to make sure you get your foot in the door, you might have to lose those deposits if you want that extra freedom to decide between the schools. So you'd put down the deposit, yep, we're going to register, and then put down the deposit for the housing. Sometimes they keep them really affordable, and other times they're really ridiculous. I think we were at UCLA, it's $250 for the statement to commit, and then the housing I think is like $30, so very affordable.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, it's surprisingly reasonable. And then I think Cal Poly, it's the statement to commit is free. There's no registration fee for that. But then the housing is a higher fee. So
And if I remember correctly, Arizona was the registration one was refundable, but the housing one was not. And the housing one I think was $500.
Yeah.
But Arizona does not have enough room for all of their freshmen. So it is based on when you put in that housing deposit. So there are people that know they're going there, that they put their housing deposit, because they do have a rolling admission, they put their housing deposit down in August. So you really, if you're waiting till August, you're probably not going to be on campus. And that is the case in a number of schools. So it's really something that once those acceptances come out, if something is a high possibility and that housing is short there, I would put that deposit down.
I agree.
It's worth it because I wouldn't want my freshmen to live off campus. I know it can work out, but it's going to be harder, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's good also that you mentioned that also, just to know that as excited as you might get about dorms and options, like we already know at UCLA, it's all the freshmen get stuck in triples and classics with no air conditioning. And it's just like a rite of passage. And it's just because they do have a 4-year housing guarantee, which is a really important thing for us looking at Southern California, being out of state. So I think you just have to really be prepared that that might be the situation. They're going to get the worst dorms and they're going to be possibly triples that used to be doubles, which happened at Oregon State and it's happening at UCLA.
It happens a lot of places. Yeah. I think our intent was to do a college trip, but this is becoming everything that we want to tell you about college process. But I hope that that's actually really helpful, because the other thing, because I'm just going to throw out some more tips, but the other thing to look at is if the school does not guarantee housing beyond like the first year or even at all, like you need to look at what the housing costs are. A lot of Hannah's friends go to school in Boston. So expensive. It's like to go. And Hannah is in Tucson, which has a much lower cost of living, but you still have these high-rise apartment buildings right next to campus that are charging $1,800 a month for a room
in a 4-bedroom place
4-bedroom, and usually it's like they're now like everybody has their own bathroom or things like that, but it's still like when I heard these prices predatory. I'm like, okay, 1,800 divided by 4, no. So but next year she's renting a house, and that is going to be more like 700 and some a month. So
huge.
There's a big difference in terms of, granted, one has more security and one is more conveniently located. And like even where she is now, which is in between those two price points, is she can catch the streetcar to campus, and she could walk, but like with a house, it's going to be either walk or you have to get a parking permit. But look at those things, like just do some little investigation. Again, the Facebook groups are amazing for that.
Yeah, highly recommend the Facebook groups. Your kid there's UCLA is great on Instagram as well. They have a whole like UCLA parents page and stuff like that. So join all that stuff, join the pages. Do be careful when you're joining the groups. Look to see if it looks like a human running it, as opposed to sometimes there's these like data mining groups where they just want to try to sell you like t-shirts and stuff, and it's not actually helpful. And they're run by it's like Student Hub or something. It's just a generic page.
Yeah.
So do try and look at who the admin administrators are, make sure it looks legit.
And how active they are, and
Yeah.
if it is moderated. I know I had joined a few and dropped some and kept others. And trust me, when your kid gets into school, there's going to be so much stuff where you're like, oh, these parents, like,
yes, there are.
You might need to hide it a little bit. But at the same time, it's so useful when you're learning about just all of the things that, parents that have already gone through it, whether it is specific classes, professors, graduation, like what happens with this or that. There's so many useful tips to get out of that.
Yeah,
kind of just have to sort through all of the other
helicopter parent posts. Yeah, the ones where they're like, I can't find classes for my kids. Kids should be registering and doing their own schedule at this point. Yeah, so one other thing, we talked about dates, but then we got off to sidetrack. But I want to come back and mention that because, as Tamara mentioned, there are some other important dates. When you're thinking of these college tours, you also want to be thinking of where you would stay and hotel options and regions on campus, because you need to know move-in if you're from out of state. It's a tricky situation to move people in. Even we're in driving distance to UCLA, or definitely in driving distance for Corvallis, but we still have to overnight because once we drive 5 hours, we're not driving back the same day after we move her in. So you need to think about move-in dates. We won't find out her assigned move-in day until August with UCLA, so that's a little tricky, but I've already booked for Parents Weekend. So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I know that's something you guys do.
Yeah, it's something that actually before Hannah even decided where she was going to go, I had booked hotels for move-in dates for Colorado and for Arizona because both of them have somewhat limited number of hotels and they can get sold out, and I don't want to be like too far away or at the Motel 6 or whatever. So you have to think about that. And definitely, so move in, even if you book a whole bunch, like book the whole week or all the possible dates, and then just cancel like what you
and
don't
then just
need.
Cancel the ones.
Book Parent Weekend like the second that they announce what weekend that's going to be.
There's a hint on that. It's almost always in the fall, and it's always will be on a home football game.
Yeah. This coming Parent Weekend, which I know you guys did one for Lizzie and then have just otherwise visited her at other times. We have gone for Parent Weekend because Hannah likes to go to the football game. We all like to experience that. And this fall, there's going to be 2 like back-to-back home games in October. And so we're like, so I booked a hotel for both. And then they finally announced which one, and I just canceled the other one.
Exactly.
And so it seems like so like this, I feel like people are going to listen to them and be like, oh, those moms are. But if you want to do it, like, I don't know how many times you get people that are just scrambling to try to figure it out later. So Kim and I are planners. That's kind of our whole MO.
That's
but,
our thing.
It makes it better. And then I'm actually looking at graduation.
That's what I was going to say,
open
graduation.
like within the next like day or two? I think I'll be able to book for next year. Because that will also be busy. But moving out is not usually as bad, but it's still something about. And just understand that the pricing is going to go up. And what I've seen a lot is people will book an Airbnb, and then the host cancels on them and then tries to raise the rates. So
be careful on the Airbnbs. That's a known thing. The other thing is be careful, even if your kid's not graduating, if you're doing move out, know when graduation is, because you don't want to try and move your kid out during the same time as graduation, if that makes sense. So just keep those in mind, because some kids get done. Move out varies, so it's not as bad because everyone's
depends on when their finals.
And your kid might have early finals and you can move it out earlier, but just be mindful of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I know. It sounds so crazy that I'm like, you got to do this and this, but
I know.
I don't know.
It becomes like you get into a rhythm of it and it's fine, but they're just, hopefully this is going to be helpful to somebody, and we shared all the things we had to learn. And,
I'm going to, one more thing, make some dinner reservations for those weekends and things as well.
Oh, yeah. I'll never forget waiting an hour for breakfast on our family weekend.
Yeah.
So we've been talking quite a bit. Let's wrap out by talking about maybe some of our favorite campus tours we have taken. Give everyone a come back, bring this caboose back on board. We were just at UCLA, of course, and I was really surprised because you picture LA and you picture Southern California, but there are so many, it reminds me of the Grand Californian at Disneyland, because there's so many like spruce trees and pine trees and massive elevation changes, lots of hills. Like the resident halls are all on what they call the hill. And we were definitely laughing that Mia's going to get a lot of exercise walking up and down hills. Yeah, I walked 20,000 steps, 10 miles on our admitted students day around UCLA.
That's a big.
Yeah, have good shoes. Be prepared for a lot of walking. But what about you? Did you have any campuses that you just fell in love with that you really liked, or what was unique that you were drawn to?
Well, there's probably a difference between me and Hannah. So
Yeah, of course.
we took her to see some schools. I'm thinking of Lehigh in Pennsylvania, Princeton, Duke, and those have the stone buildings and the ivy, and they just look like that kind of traditional college.
Yep.
And it was not what she was interested in at all. And we're like, but it's such a beautiful campus. So
Yeah.
you never know. We liked Michigan a lot. She didn't like Michigan. She was really into Wisconsin-Madison. And I was surprised because when we visited, it was like freezing rain.
Cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we both really love the campus of Colorado Boulder.
Yeah.
Because the mountains and the sky, it is a beautiful campus also. And she really loved UCLA. It's really funny because now that she goes to University of Arizona and she obviously loved University of Arizona, but like now that they're more rivals, she'll like badmouth UCLA. And I'm like, remember when you really wanted to go?
Yeah.
So
it's going to be the Bruins versus the Wildcats for our kids.
Yeah.
Those are good
those
ones.
are all. Everything is just so different. I don't.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be like what fits with your kid. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's right. Yeah. I know that when we visited University of Washington, like it's got some gorgeous buildings, beautiful fountains and all of that, but it's near a shopping area. It's near it's just kind of more city feeling but it's got some beautiful old stuff.
And when we first visited University of Arizona, we saw it first because actually when she was like in 9th grade or something, she went to astronomy camp there over the summer once for a week, but we didn't really see the campus then. But when I took her for the college tour, as we were like walking to the college tour, I got to notice that our flight was canceled. So I spent the whole college tour like on my phone trying to rebook. And so then we finally finished, and plus it was like 115 degrees.
I remember
and
this.
I was like, "What'd you think?" And she's like, "I really loved it." I'm like, "You did?" And I was like, "What did I miss?" Because I was like looking down and not really paying that much attention, and I was trying to step. They were probably standing in the shade, and I was stepping away, so I wasn't being rude and being on my phone. So I was like, sweating. But now when I go to campus and I see the mall and it's lined with palm trees and the fountain in front of the Old Main, I'm like, oh yeah, this is beautiful.
This is pretty. This is nice. Yeah. And I would say I'm going to close out like one of the other things I was thinking of as you're walking these campuses, and I think this is important for Mia, is what does again, if you're visiting on the weekend, you're going to get a different vibe. So I think it's important to visit while school's in session. Like if your spring break is the same time as their spring break, you're not going to be able to get this feel as much. But what does the student body look like? And does your kid feel represented there? I had friends who are Asian and they went and visited a campus and they felt like they stuck out. They didn't feel like they matched there at all. And I know for Mia, it was really important for her to feel like it was a diverse campus and represented what the world looks like and stuff. That was something that stood out to her that was really important for her to see. And so I think it's important when you're touring these campuses to see what the student body looks like and does it fit you.
Yeah, definitely. Because even like University of Arizona, one of the things that we heard from someone before she went there was that they don't wear a lot of clothes there. And it's true.
Yeah.
It is also really hot there.
Yeah.
But if you just look at like TikTok, especially like during sorority rush and stuff, you're going to think everyone has like a certain look.
Body type
but
look,
when you're actually on campus, you can then see, all right, there's this kind of look, there's this kind of look, there's, you know, like, so you're going to see whether or not you feel like I'm going to not fit in or fit in.
Yeah. And I would say even if you're visiting, if you are doing a campus tour and there's not a lot of students around, one thing you can do is if you are able to walk through any of the buildings, I look at all the bulletin boards. Have you ever done that?
No.
Oh, that's like the number one thing that Mia and I love doing is looking at the bulletin boards in the buildings because there's always pictures of different groups that did some kind of project.
Okay.
And then you also see the flyers for people are asking for this or people are looking for this. And so it gives you a vibe of what the life is like. So if it's a really full bulletin board and you're seeing like diverse groups in the pictures of their project or you're seeing what they're working on. Like we were in Cal Poly and they have a amusement theme park mechanical engineering like club. And I thought that was so cool. And they take trips around. It showed them at different places. Like they were at Disneyland and they were at Universal. And So you can get a vibe a little bit that way if you're not able to really invest. It's look at the bulletin boards in some of the buildings.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
We were not in any buildings back when we were doing
Yeah,
our tours,
exactly.
but-
That's tricky.
Yeah. I hope that this gave everyone a lot of food for thought. If you guys are looking at any of these schools and have specific questions, I'm sure that we would be happy to answer. And good luck.
Good luck. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe and rate and review on your favorite podcast app, as that helps other people discover us. And if you want to see more, follow me, Tamara, at Your Time to Fly on Instagram and Facebook and all the others.
And you can follow me, Kim, at Stuffed Suitcase on Instagram, Facebook, and of course my blog.